disturbing situation, and obviously your activism definitely changed it. My other question now is: was you scared, Leymah? I mean, obviously, going through that, knowing that yes, at the same time, you had to fight for your country. You had to stand up for what you believed in. But was there a time where you were frightened or you were afraid that it would retaliate in a wrong way for you?
Of definitely, everyone, once you're a human, you have those moments of fear. But there were several things that kept me going. One, there was this one day that I met one of the women. She's old and she's sitting next to me where we used to sit in an open field, and she was very cold. Her clothes were all torn and tattered. And we started a conversation. I asked her why she was always early. Why was she part of the movement? And she asked me, "Do you have sons?" And I said, "Yes, two." And she said, "Well, I had two sons, and both one was killed previously and one had just gotten killed. And that she had come when she heard women was gathering to ensure that I don't lose my two sons." So every time there was this moment of fear, there was always a mental note to myself that this is not about you. This is about those women who have sacrificed or lost everything. That's the first thing. The second thing was, in those moments where the fear came, I kept pushing. And the way I describe it is not that I was never afraid, but I never allowed fear to stop me. Because whether we're afraid or not afraid, the possibility of death was all around us. First persons that I spoke to was Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And these were his words to me: "My daughter, you've won the Peace Prize. Be careful what you say, because everything you say becomes a quote." And so, even if I may take his words further, everything you do gains attention. So it's a huge platform to do good. It's a huge platform to speak up for humanity. It's a huge platform. So there is a lot that the Peace Prize has done and is doing, in terms of those things that I'm passionate about: girls' education, peace and security, women's involvement in peace processes. It's no longer this girl in a village or in a small country like you're speaking. It's me having global platform to challenge systems and structures. Yeah.
What is the crime rate in Liberia? I want to know about more the crime rate, because in the UK and the US, let's just be direct and honest. The US, the crime rate is massive. In the UK, we have a lot of stabbings, but there's a lot of knife crime that's happening in the UK. What is the crime rate like in Liberia? And do you think it's been marginalized, or do you think there's more to improve?
I think the crime rate in Liberia has improved massively over the last few years. We have incidences here, there, but it's not as bad as, for a nation coming out of war, for a nation where a whole generation was socialized to violence. I would say that it's not so bad. And it's not me trying to make Liberia look good, but that is the reality. Yeah.
What did also the war teach you, Leymah? Because obviously psychology, you would have seen a lot and you would have experienced a lot. What did the war teach you in them 14 years when you saw and you acted upon it and you knew your attention, your world attention was, a lot of people were noticing your bravery. What did the war teach you?
Hmm. That's a very hard question. And I say hard question because I'm sure there's a lot of that, and not just I'm sure there's a lot of learning that I took from the war. But one of the things that I've held on to is that people's socialization plays a major role in the path or in the way that they respond to crisis. I grew up in a multi-cultural, multi-tribal, and multi-religious community. And as I went through the war, those values that was drilled into me as a child became a very strong part of the work that I did, but also became a strong part of how I interacted with people. If anything, the war taught me that there are more good people than evil people in our world. Because there were instances where we went into communities and people took their last to share with different groups. But I also feel like, whilst I believe there are more good people than evil people in our world, I feel that evil thrives because a lot of good people are too afraid to stand up for what they believe.
Do you think also, in your opinion, Lema, it's a brilliant question. It's a brilliant answer you said there, and it's good that you spoke about evil. Do you think it's easier for people to be evil than it is to be good? Because they say, and there's a motto in life. They say that good things happen to bad people. They also do say good things happen to good people, and it might be some sort of humorous, but actually behind that, there is a motto or a fact behind that. Do you think people want to be evil more in this world compared to being good? It's easier.
I think to be evil is easier than to be good. It's easier to take a gun to deal with a problem. It's easier to take a knife and stab someone. It's very hard to sit and have a conversation when you have conflict with someone, because sometimes it reveals some of your personal demons, and most people do not want to confront those demons that they carry on a daily basis. Making being a good person is hard because it's a conscious decision. So most times when I'm working with young people, especially those who have the who are very quick to use violence as a means of dealing with their issues, I say the difference between a good person and a bad person is a minute of exhaling or a minute of breathing. That's the difference. So the bad person will not take a minute to breathe. They will take the knife and all. Well, every one of us have good and bad in us. But the point that I try to make is that it's easier to just run, grab a knife, and stab someone rather than take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, I will handle this later. So that's the difference. But I think it's easy to do evil because I don't have to deal with listening to what they have to say about me. I don't have to confront my demons. I don't have to confront all of the things that I carry in my head. So let me just get rid of them and move on. In order for you to be a good person, you have to take a step back. You have to deal with your own issues in order to deal with the issues. And that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be good, and it's easier to be bad.
And also a suggestion to you, Lema, because clearly your voice is very recognized in terms of Liberia. And I think if you speak up, people would actually kind of follow, or they would definitely follow. Now, as you said before, children's education, children's education around the world, I think, in my personal opinion, is a necessity. Because if you don't have a child who's not educated, it's very easy for adults to manipulate them like they did at the time when Charles Taylor was actually in power in terms of the children soldiers, where they were manipulated to hurt and kill people around in Liberia. Now, do you think, in your perspective, in the current government today, do you think they should improve on child's education because it's a necessity, because you don't want Liberia to go down that road again?
Oh, definitely. And that's why personally I've spent a lot of my time investing in education for young people through the work of my foundation, because I believe that it's the only way that we can take this country to where we need to get to. Early childhood education, elementary education, high school education, university education, but beyond. And one of the things that I often say to my colleagues here at the foundation is that we should not just send people to school. We should rather provide education. So beyond the classroom, have moments where we can sit and talk about issues, talk about the policies and the politics, talk about religious interaction, talk about the economy, talk about peace and justice. So it's not just, most times when people want to talk about education, say we need to send people to school, and we've seen that Sending people to school doesn't necessarily mean that they're educated, but spending time mentoring the next generation and talking with them. And I think this is something that everyone should be invested in. On our continent, Liberia specifically, we have so many natural resources. But if you look at our school curriculum, a lot of the curriculum doesn't talk about the resources that we have now that companies are coming into the country to take, like multinational companies. I think if we begin to teach our children, this next generation of Liberian youth will not easily give out a mining concession, but they will rather sit and think and say, how can we use this to the benefit of our nation? So I think education is a major part of any nation's reconstruction, rehabilitation, and rebuilding.
What did you see, Leymah? I want to know. I want to go more in depth in this conversation because someone like you has seen it through your own eyes. Someone like me can't really. I can't really compare myself to you because someone who has not won the Nobel Peace Prize, but at the same time has seen death in her eyes. What did you see, Leymah? What worried you, and also what made you continue? What did you actually see physically?
So I'll give you an example. When I was 17, because as a child, there was this traditional belief that children were not allowed to see the dead. So most times in our neighborhood, when someone died, children were not allowed to go and see the body, but they always placed the dark charcoal on our forehead. And there's a belief that that dark charcoal was a veil that covered the eyes of children from seeing spirit. So I would say that we're very sheltered from a lot of things. And the first time during the war, I saw a dead body, I froze because until this day, I have a vivid memory of this woman holding her Bible, lying down, and dogs were mowing at her body. I could not move. I couldn't get that image out of my head. And so eventually it became a regular scene, of me walking by dead people or hearing about the death of. But by the time I had gotten involved with starting a movement, it was just seeing, it was hearing, and also being threatened. Threatened, women working with us, telling us stories of them being sexually assaulted. One of the women talked about how soldiers had used knife and different things on her, including her private area. So what we're seeing from 1990 up until 2003 was just like Liberia was moving from bad to worse to ridiculous. And those were the images and scenes that we didn't really want to keep going at. There are many stories of pregnant women being deported by soldiers and all of those things. So those were not things that we wanted to be a part of.
Absolutely, Labour. Now, in terms of, I want to go straight more in depth, in Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was obviously the former Liberian president, who obviously at the same time created such a chaos in terms of Liberia at the time. Now, having someone like that at such a powerful seat is very questionable. So my question to you is, Layla, is what's your thoughts? Obviously now he's behind bars and he's in a UK prison here and he's been in prison for, I believe, more than 50 years now. But in terms of, his behavior and his power, what was your thoughts on that and how did you perceive that?
Well, Taylor was a president or a leader to fear. Liberia was a police state. There were guns all over. People would, soldiers at checkpoints, if you flash your car light too brightly on them, you could get beaten or arrested for that. So it was just like a lawless place. People would drive into communities. I personally saw a truck drive into a community in northern Nigeria, and they were just picking young people and throwing them in there because that was their way of recruiting their fighters. So we live in a lawless country under the Taylor regime, and there was violence and death and destruction all over around us. And so when we started our movement, a lot of people were very worried about us. They were worried about the possibility of us being raped, the possibility of us dying. There were so many things that they were worried about. But personally, and with alongside a lot of the women, we had seen the worst of our society. No reason for us to stay back. Like I said earlier, it's either you die trying or you die not trying. And the decision by us women was that it's better for us to put ourselves in the front line so that tomorrow, if our children came back to say, so what was your role? What did you do? We can raise our hands to say, oh, this is what we did. And even though we weren't successful, but fortunately for us, we were successful.
And did you ever feel abandoned from the international community, Lema? Because obviously, what you did was something, marvelous. But at the same time, obviously, it would have been helpful or it would have been needful to have international community assistance. Did you ever feel abandoned, or did you ever get the right attention that you deserved?
You know, one of the language or the word that I hated in those years was sovereign nation. Because every time there was a need for any kind of intervention or any push for intervention, people used the word sovereign nation. And when we started protesting, we were asking for three things: immediate unconditional ceasefire, a fruitful dialogue by the warring parties, and the deployment of an intervention force. And we knew that if a peacekeeping force came to Liberia, we would, but Taylor had disagreed that he was going to fight till the last soldier, that there was no way he would negotiate with rebel, and that Liberia was a sovereign nation and they could not bring foreign forces on its soil. For us, if you recognize in 2003, it was not an era where women peace builders were a thing. We were one of the trailblazers in the international world of women who were in the forefront. So, on that count, we weren't considered to be anything at the earlier stage of our movement. People saw us like toothless bulldogs, like people who were looking for recognition. There was not an example of women who were actively protesting as active war was also going on in country. In most places where women protested, it was either in the diaspora or some at peace talks or something. But in those days, Liberian women were in country, face to face with guns, face to face with dictators, and they were protesting and calling them out to end the war. We did not get any international recognition. We didn't get any kind of funding from anyone. As a matter of fact, when we went to the peace talks, the times that we used to be hanging around the halls of the talks, people and sometimes the mediator will call us to seek our opinion. Some governments will be upset that we were not, we should not be engaged, and there were moments where they had heated arguments where some other governments would say, no, we should engage them. Because if we're reconstructing Liberia, if we're rebuilding Liberia, the opinion of these women is very important. Yeah. So, yes, we didn't get 100% support as women, but I can say that the international community was concerned about Liberia. But for us as women, no, we didn't get any level of support from many, 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 many countries.
Do you also think, Lema, and let's just be honest and direct and straight, in terms of what you're saying, in terms of the help that you needed but you wasn't able to achieve? Now, obviously, racism is a huge part in the world. We suffer it today in America, in the UK, regardless. Do you think at some point that you were segregated and discriminated in terms of being Liberian and at the same time not getting the help that you deserved?
But definitely, I mean, we were women who, till this day, even after we were able to achieve what we achieved, some people would still do interviews and refer to us as uneducated market women. So that was the mindset. No one really thought that we had any level of any education or that we have any level of nothing. People, they, it was there. It was, and because there is this thing that happens to women all over the world. regardless of their race, that when they go through war, people never want to talk about the strength of their movement. People never want to talk about the strategies and all of the things that they did. People do not see them as women who have some level of power. What they do see is that or what they are looking for is rape. They're looking for abuse. They're looking for suffering. But even in the midst of, and I won't say that there were some women in the group that were not raped, that were not abused, but that did not define them. But in most instances, those who were coming were not paying attention to us. And maybe if we were from different place or we had different skin color, I don't dwell on race a lot. Maybe we would have gotten the kind of support we needed, but in those moments, we did not. Yeah.
Now, I'm not fascinated by Charles Taylor, and I know I've asked you a question before, but I will say from my investigation and also my research, at the same time when he also used to hire child soldiers, young children became soldiers. Now, obviously, that was especially in the year 2026, it's quite abnormal and at the same time quite disturbing for me to understand and actually read this. What was it like in terms of the child soldiers being in Liberia? And at the same time, what do you think Charles Taylor, the former Liberian president, was trying to achieve in his agenda?
Well, I can't really say what his agenda was, but people say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, I think it was all about power. It was all about the natural resources. Liberia is rich when it comes to resources. There are diamond, gold, the timber, iron ore, and all of those things. And most times, like everywhere on the continent where you see war, it's all about the resources. But they come with the political agenda. They package it like a political agenda that we want to rescue people, we want to do this. Who is the easiest group of people to use to take AK-47 and other guns to carry out the crimes that they need to carry? Children, because their minds are not developed to a way that they're able to discern who is a good person, who's a bad person. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of these young children that were used by Taylor soldiers were children who were left back by their parents. So, for example, a mother have 5 kids, and all of a sudden, violence erupts, shooting erupts in the community. The first thing she's grabbing, or the first group she's grabbing, is the group of children that she's able to carry. So if she has 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, they are left to run with her. And most times, a lot of these children, fortunately for me, I work with child soldiers starting from 1988, 99 up to 2000. And a lot of these children's stories were the same. We got left back. The war erupted in our villages. We got left back. And when the soldiers came, they made us porters. They made us to be carrying things for them. And after a while, they taught us how to shoot. And then we became fighters. These young children were fed drugs and they were sent into. So in most of the what we saw in Liberia was not just the Taylor faction but other faction using these little children as a means of terrorizing people, as a means of creating fear and establishing an order. That order is, if you try to challenge us, you will get killed or you will get disciplined. So it literally was to keep people in line, in fear, and not to shake or rattle the status quo. And the status
Did
quo
you
was
have
death and
did you also
destruction.
have sorry to disturb you there, Lema, but did you also have sleepless nights? Because obviously at night time thinking about this, it must have been very difficult for you and your family, knowing that you've got children out there running around with guns. At the same time, you got a Liberian president at the time who his agenda isn't good; is actually quite evil in that perspective.
Let me say something to you. From the beginning of the war, even before Taylor forces came to Monrovia, there was the former president Taylor forces. We learned to be grateful for